Hey everyone, welcome to my wife's channel, and you're now back for part 2.
Once the baby was now delivered, as soon as he came up, they put him right on my chest and they were still wiping him off while
Getting
he was
cleaned
there.
up.
Yeah.
And now I just saw my son come out, and I saw his head was like almost like indented.
I wouldn't say it was indented. It was
I don't know how to
elongated.
describe. I don't know how to.
Elongated.
No, baby, it wasn't elongated.
It's like his head went like this, right? And that's what you were concerned about. Say his head was gonna, because it had to fit through the birth canal.
Babe, like I'm telling you, like it had like some dense grooves into it. And okay, let's say it's also elongated as well. And I was like, oh my God. And that took me back because I mean, I've never seen a baby born like firsthand. And the nurse had saw me. She's like, Adrian, this is completely normal. It's fine. The head will come back into shape.
Yeah, and then doing the whole skin to skin. We got his first latch in the first hour.
So now the machines had come in, which was a pediatric team. They came in, and this was again to do the screening on Aiden in terms of the calcifications and the spotting that they had seen here. Now that he was now finally outside of the womb,
Adrian was over at the was it an X-ray?
it was an X-ray and an X-ray.
Yeah, so they went over to the X-ray machine while they did the machine, like the whole stuff on Aiden. And one other thing that we also noticed when Aiden was born was his foot. If you think of a foot is like an L shape, right? So your leg is here and your foot is here. There you go. Perfect. So when Aiden was born, Aiden's foot was like this up against his leg and also pointed out to the right hand side. This is his right foot. So that's pretty much what his foot kind of looked like. And when we were asking a few nurses about it, they're like, oh, he'll be fine, he'll grow out of it, don't worry. But as parents, you know something's not right. Yeah. Right? So we pushed until even Adrian had to go down to an orthopedic department, into the orthopedic department, to find somebody. I think a couple days after we got home, they finally called us.
No, babe, someone had come the same day as well before we had left to come take a look at his foot. And the initial assessment was deemed a club foot, which we found out that wasn't the case. But yeah.
Yeah, and then when we finally went to see the orthopedic surgeon, it's something called, what is it called? Well, we'll put the name somewhere up here. I can't remember the exact name of it now, but it's pretty much the opposite of clubfoot.
Mm-hmm.
And it's rare. Clubfoot is quite common, and what Aiden has is very rare. So the process of this was casting. So many of you have probably seen pictures of Aiden in a cast, in a brace. The first 8 weeks, I believe it was, he was in a cast. So every week we were going to the hospital to get his foot recasted so they can adjust it to be in place, proper place. So it's holding it in place and casting it.
And it worked perfectly. Like we noticed, like even after his first casting, like there was like a significant improvement. And it, like literally, like as Henry was talking, like it shifted from, and it was almost like back to that L shape itself. Like it was, wow.
Yeah, it was good to see. Then after the 8-week process of casting, he went into a brace, and he was in a brace for 6 weeks. And it seems like that brace didn't work the way it was supposed to. So now he's back to casting, and there's conversations of possibly surgery right now. But we're obviously praying and believing that God will do something differently, so my baby boy does not have to go through surgery.
Please join us in praying for him as well.
Yes.
We'd really appreciate that as well. So.
Yes. So that's one of the conditions that came up after Aiden was born.
And can I also just say this? Aiden's foot is not deemed anything by like genetics or anything that we did or didn't do, or the case. It was just literally like he was just pressing on the womb in a certain direction, and his foot just
stayed the way that
that's all it is.
Pushed against my womb. So after testing of the liver, the calcifications on the liver, other things also came up. Another thing was
gallstones. They thought that he may have had gallstones, and I went through gallstones personally, so I know how traumatic that is in terms of the pain and so forth. So I was just imagining that again, that he's now going through some type of pain and he's not able to vocalize now, the discomfort and the pain and so forth that he's going through. So,
and babies are not supposed to be born with gallstones. Like, you can only get that stuff when you start eating solid foods, like what causes like you can look up what causes gallstones, but babies should not. So they were very confused and concerned about how he could have gallstones.
And I think this is where, I think more so myself than Tenn-Lai, where it's almost like you kind of blame yourself. I'm just like, if I had gallstones, is this genetic that I pass this on to my son? Like, how could I have done this to my son? And it's just like, wow.
And they did tell him it has nothing to do with you. Another thing that also came up is that his kidneys sat lower than they're supposed to.
In the lower tract,
Yeah, that was another thing that they were monitoring. Before we even found out about the gallstones, because we found out about the gallstones like right before we were leaving the hospital, they also said that he had a possible cyst in the, I don't know the technical terms for this, but it's something that connects to the bowels. Like all these different things. We had, I think it was 3 different surgical teams that were teaming
GI
up.
with general surgeon. We had, I forget the other 2 teams now.
Yeah, like a whole bunch of surgical teams that like were meeting daily, looking at all these different tests that he was doing daily. Every second they were coming to take Aiden for another test. And another thing was his bilirubin. Like his bilirubin just wasn't where it was supposed to be. They kept
it was on the higher side,
that. Yeah. So it was a lot at one time for this one baby.
And mind you, all that we knew going into this was that there's just possible calcifications.
Yeah.
Right. So we're already stressed and there's some anxiety there in terms of, what the calcification is, what's caused it, how are we going to maneuver and kind of deal with it. Now on top of that, we're now being told some of these additional layers now being added on top of that, right? So there's a lot. It was a lot. And as new parents, we never had a child before and we're just figuring things out as they go.
I felt like every time they came, it was either I was crying or Adrian was just in that low place, and it was hard. And through all of this, I had my own issues that I was going on with. I didn't know that first I lost a lot of blood during delivery. I think it was 1 liter of blood that I lost. So they were monitoring me not knowing they were monitoring me, where they had to come and take my blood to see, okay, what your blood levels are, what's my counts, whatnot. As well as after delivery, you have, I think it's 6 hours that you have to pee 250 milliliters. And I couldn't pee. I actually could not pee.
That should be like a part 3 in itself, babe.
I've talked about this on another video, but I couldn't pee, and they had to catheterize me 3 times because they couldn't get the catheter inside of me. When they finally got a doctor, because the nurses couldn't do it, finally catheterized me properly. I had to sit with that thing for 12 hours. And when they finally put it in, it was what? How much?
Over like 1.5 liters
of pee inside of me.
Yeah.
And the problem with that is that I could have hemorrhaged if that didn't come out.
Yeah,
right?
It was
a lot of pee that I did not feel. Did not feel it at all. And I got an infection because I had to get sewed up down there from birth, and having that thing lean against my stitches, and then them trying so many times, I got an infection. So I was on antibiotics. But anyways, that was my own issues that I was going on with. And we were in the hospital for
5 days.
Yeah, about 5 days. First because they wouldn't discharge me until I could pee. And second, because of all the stuff with Aiden. So having to monitor everything with Aiden. And when we finally found out we were going home, like, we were so happy.
The sense of relief. Yeah.
It was, even though we were going home, I think it was the next day we still had to go back to the hospital.
The bilirubin.
Yeah, for the bilirubin. And then after the first couple weeks we were going to the hospital a couple times a week until it ended up just being once a week for the casting. But there was so much things that were going on with so many different testings that the hospital was our new home. But I will say, I think it was a month and a half. Aiden was about a month and a half at this point where we actually started to realize he was having some issues breathing. He was making these breathing sounds and we were really, really concerned. So brought him to the hospital. They were doing some tests. And one of the tests came back where his heart was not positioned in the right place.
Yeah, so it wasn't centered properly, they're saying.
It's not on his left side like it's supposed to be. It's more in the center of his chest.
Sorry. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
So we're like, oh God, here we go again. But the doctor that we had, he saw Aiden's file and like, you've been through a whole lot with this child. I'm not going to freak you out. We're going to keep him overnight, monitor his breathing, and do another x-ray in the morning to look at what his heart looks like. This was, I think, the most traumatic time for us.
This was the scariest.
Yeah.
Because you're dealing with his inability to breathe, right? So, yeah, this was scary.
And then hearing his heart, right? It was a concern. And because of COVID, we had to separate. Adrian could not stay. They had to do a COVID test on my baby boy. I ended up staying at the hospital with Aiden, and Adrian came home, did not sleep. If you did, probably a couple hours of sleep because we were waiting to get that COVID test back. We knew he was negative. The hospital has to do it to verify that he is negative before he would allow Adrian back into the hospital.
That was probably like one of the most... Yeah, that was a hard time for me.
For both of us. Bothered me being alone and not having Adrian there while we're going through all of this. Like, I think every couple hours I was calling him crying. Aiden slept. Like, Aiden was great. He was fine. But it was more us, the unknown. In the morning, came in, they did an x-ray. His heart ended up being fine. They monitored him on a machine for his breathing. And they said everything was good, but they did refer us to an ears, nose, and throat specialist. They did that testing right before we end up getting discharged. And they were just saying there was just a lot of mucus in his chest. But it wasn't anything of a concern. The general doctor that was helping us the entire time, a couple weeks later, we did a follow-up with him. And he was like, there's no need for him to continue to follow up with me. I think I'm good. We kept praying, and it's funny because when I was pregnant, I said to Adrian that Aiden is going to be a testimony, and you don't know the power of your words until you're living it. And he has been a testimony because the cyst that they said that was there, no longer there. The gallstones gone. Like, they don't know how, disappeared. His kidneys still low, but it's not a concern. His foot healing the way that it's supposed to, even though I would say it's kind of like a setback right now because of the news that we got, but he's not where he used to be, and I'm celebrating that. The calcifications in his liver are still there, but it has not affected his life quality at all. Even when we mentioned the whole cystic fibrosis that we thought it was, it's not that. Like, it was one thing after the next. I just kept getting good news. It was like a stream of bad stuff, and now a stream of good stuff is coming. And we probably will never know what calcifications on his liver.
What's his breathing like right now?
He's fine. Yeah. Another thing to check off the list. Now, we did get to refer to a pediatrician. Went to see the pediatrician, and she gave us news that we were not aware of. She said that he has a murmur. Heart murmur. We had no idea. We had a test done for, like, an EKG done to continue to look at his heart. So that's something that's still now on the table for us to just monitor.
But we're already here where we're about to say.
Yeah, we're believing that it's what you think you saw is not there. And if it was there, it's gone. Everything else God has said, done with, and we're believing that it's the same for that. So this is all the stuff that we've been dealing with. We haven't really talked about it with anybody in this much detail, but I know there's been lots of questions out there, and we will continue to keep you on this journey with us. We're open, we're honest, because we know what our experience is. There's other parents that are probably experiencing the same thing, and this is more to let you know that you're not alone. And if you have any questions, you can always leave comments down below, and we'll be happy to let you know. We don't know when a follow-up video will be done, but when we have more information to share, we'll let you know. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and mamas, I'll talk to you soon.